Right, it is 3 p.m. BST on my watch. I will start welcoming everyone, letting everyone in the room. Hello, everyone. Just letting people in at the moment, so bear with me. Just give people a few more minutes to join us.
Hello, William.
Hey. Right, I think we can make it a start, and if we've got more people joining, we will just let them in as they come. So hello everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are on this planet, and a really warm welcome to all of you, dear colleagues, dear members of the media, and all of you watching this press conference on YouTube, on the YouTube channel. Just a brief remark for those of you football enthusiasts. You will have noticed that we, on purpose, we didn't want to clash with any of the games today. So I hope you will appreciate that. Right, we've got a great turnout today. Many of you attending, so that's really good. For what we expect, to be a great day, we will be announcing a very exciting milestone for the SKA project and for our newly born international intergovernmental organization, the SKA Observatory, or SKAO for short. As many of you in the audience will know, the SKA has been in the making for a long time, for 30 years. Since the first discussions, really the inception of the project to build the next generation radio telescope. There's been many years, over 20 years of technological developments, about a decade of detailed engineering design work, and several years of international negotiations to establish the SKA Observatory as an intergovernmental organization. And now, just a few months after the launch of the IGO, here we are to announce a major milestone for the project. So just a few words about the program today. So we've got a great lineup for you, a few speakers. So we will start by a brief tour de table. I will ask the speakers to introduce themselves quite briefly. And then after that, for about 20 minutes, we will have a few presentations for you. Our speakers will be providing an overview, if you like, of several key aspects of the observatory and the SKA project. And then we'll be able to move on to the question time. And at that time, I will be asking you, as many of you will know now, we are used to it, to use your virtual hand if you want to ask questions, and I will take questions in order. And you can also use the chat box if you wanted to. So I will start in the order of my screen. So Phil Diamond, Phil, over to you for a short introduction.
Thank you, William, and good afternoon, at least good afternoon UK time to all of those calling in. My name is Philip Diamond. I'm the Director General of the SKA Observatory.
Thank you, Phil. Philippa, over to you.
Thanks, William. Hello, everyone. I'm Philippa Hartley. I'm a postdoc at the SKAO. where I'm working on science data challenges, which I'll be talking about shortly, and doing science on evolving galaxies and dark matter.
Great, thank you, Philippa. Chiara, over to you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chiara Ferrari. I am an astronomer working at the Côte d'Azur Observatory in the south of France, and I am a SKA-France director.
Thank you, Chiara. And then we've got Simon Berry and Joe McMullin in the office. Simon. You're muted, Simon. Yeah, that's working.
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Simon Berry. I'm head of the Director General's office here at the SKA Observatory. And I'm responsible for international relations and the operation of the Observatory Council.
That's great. Thank you, Simon. Joe, over to you.
Hi, Joe McMullin, Deputy Director General and the Program Director where the construction fund begins.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. Right. So without further ado, I will now start sharing the presentation, as we've said. Right, I hope you can all see my screen. So we will start with a brief overview of the SKA Observatory by Phil Diamond.
Thank you, William. So I will be brief. Most of you will know this. So it's just as a reminder that the SKA Observatory is a global collaboration of 16 countries with the mission of building and operating the next generation radio astronomy observatory, which will consist of 2 radio telescopes, each of which will be the largest radio telescopes in the world in their frequency range. So the artist's impression at the bottom left and bottom right show respectively what we call the SKA Low, covering low radio frequencies, located in Western Australia, and SKA Mid, covering the mid-range of the radio frequencies, located in South Africa. The SKA Mid will also incorporate and integrate the 64 antennas of Meerkat, which is currently operational. So we are, as William has said, we're a new intergovernmental organization, the second only in astronomy after ESO, and we're just a few months old. The organization being born on the 4th of February of this year. It's headquartered at Jodrell Bank in Manchester, so it's a truly global observatory, and in fact with partner countries from around the globe. Simon will describe that a little more detail in a moment. We will generate an enormous amount of data, and Philippa will touch upon that, but it will require a network of regional centers which will provide the portal to astronomers and other scientists wishing to access SKAO data. So next one, William. I don't have time to talk about the huge range of science that the SKA will deliver. Suffice to say, it's almost the entire history of the universe, and Chiara will expand on 1 or 2 of these subject areas in a few minutes. Next one. So our mission, very briefly, we've tried to capture it in a single sentence, is to build and operate cutting-edge radio telescopes to transform our understanding of the universe. But research infrastructures requiring the level of investment that something like SKA does cannot only do that. And so we will also work to deliver benefits to society through the collaboration of with our global partners, and ensuring that innovation, where possible, where appropriate, is translated into benefit to society. So the key features I've mentioned, the 2 largest telescopes on Earth, covering the frequency range given there. They are located in superb radio quiet zones in Australia and South Africa, HQ in the UK, as I've mentioned. And they are will be incorporating state-of-the-art technology all the way from the front end where the radio photons are received, all the way through to the software used to generate science. Our cost estimate, quite a reliable estimate, we are now confident, will be about 2 billion euros for construction and operations over the coming decade. And of course, significantly greater level of funds beyond that. We're building the SKA to last 50 years or more. It will handle massive volumes of data from the 2 petabits per second raw data, which far exceeds the total data rates flowing through the global internet. Which, following data reduction through the system, will generate 700 petabytes of scientific data through these regional centers. We very much recognize that we are global citizens with the SKA, and we are already maximizing the use of green technology, low power systems within the design, and sustainable power for the operation of the 2 telescopes. And we're very much working with local and indigenous communities. We recognize we are guests on their land, and we will be having various programs to work with the local communities and ensuring that they benefit as much as possible from the contracts that will be let in the 2 host countries. And just last Friday, we had a momentous decision with the Council of the SKA Observatory unanimously approving the start of construction of the first phase of the SKA, with the kickoff date for those activities just 2 days from now. Joe McMullin will say more about that in a moment. And at the start of last week, I sent out a message to the senior staff saying that this was the most momentous week in my professional career. And I wasn't joking. This decision was a culmination of 3 decades of work by thousands of scientists, engineers, and others from across the globe. And I was so pleased when the council gave its approval. So I think I stop there, William, and over to the next speaker.
Thanks, Phil. And thanks, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today to talk to you just a little bit about how we are preparing our community for the next era in astronomy. So I'll be introducing the science data challenges that we're running. Before I do, I'd like to give you a quick overview of the journey of SKA data. So as Phil mentioned, huge amounts of data are received at our telescopes, but really that journey begins deep in space, where radio waves are traveling from sometimes over 13 billion years ago to get to us, where they are intercepted by our telescopes, or they will be. So our telescopes in Australia and in South Africa will reduce, data will be reduced significantly there, but we're still looking at a rate of about 13 terabits per second. I calculate that's about 300 high definition films per second. You might want to fact check that. That data is transported to our data processing facilities, which will be pretty much on site at the telescopes. And that's where the data will be cleaned, combined and calibrated and turned into images of the radio sky. Those images will be sent to our SKA regional centres. So as Phil mentioned, these will be distributed computational facilities, and it's these centres where our science community will access and process their data to extract the amazing science findings of the future. So you'll see that over this journey, the data is vastly reduced in size, but the final data products our science community will work with are still pretty huge by today's standards. The data will also be uniquely complex to radio data and radio images we've had in the past. And that's because of our telescopes being able to see further and further into space than previous radio telescopes have been able to do. So our images will be uniquely busy, full of galaxies overlapping each other. And it's with those two unique features of SKA data in mind that we are devising, thank you, the SKA Science Data Challenges. So our primary goals: first, we want to make sure we can familiarise our science community with the size and the complexity of our data. This will allow our scientists to design their future observations using the SKA. And it will also allow them to design the data analysis technologies of the future to exploit that data. Now, that development, the drive of that data analysis techniques will have a reach beyond astronomy, because it will also drive forward techniques in global technologies, including machine learning. So the challenges so far, we've got a couple of examples of the kind of challenges our participating teams have been working on. These are simulated images that we're asking our participants to look at and try and find objects within and measure them. So if you look at the top right image, you can see a field where you have a huge amount of faint dots. Each one of those dots is a galaxy. The large objects you can see in the foreground, you've got what we call radio galaxies, and these are typically what quasars look like in the radio, sometimes look like in the radio. So you have these dramatic jets of plasma that are being spewed out of a supermassive black hole. And the key thing about our data sets, one of the key things then, is the size of them. So we're currently simulating data sets about 1 terabyte in size. And something that's really important to us, not just in the data challenges, but the whole ethos of the SKA, is to make sure that our data is freely accessible, it's equally accessible, and that people are able to process it. So with that in mind, we are working with computational facility partners around the world in a really exciting collaboration that allows us to host our data on their data centers. So rather than participants having to download their data to their own computers, they can log in to these remote data centers, process the data on the centers as well. So not only does this make our data challenges more fair, it also allows us to test some of the elements of our future regional centre model. So we can test methods of data access, we can test new technologies for a distributed platform, and of course we can encourage, another really important part of what we want to do is to encourage open science best practice, so that science is for everyone. And I will just leave you with the map produced of the participants who are taking part in our latest data challenge. So we were extremely excited to see the geographical spread. We have participants representing all 5 continents. What we really would love to see, we're currently working on our next data challenges, and we would really love to see more and more participation, especially from those underrepresented regions, because the challenges are really exciting opportunity to be involved in SKA preparatory techniques and also in the global effort to develop new data analysis technologies. So I'll leave you with a small advert, which is just to flash up some of the science data challenge ideas we are working on, looking at things like quasars, cosmic magnetism, the concept of cosmic dawn. And we invite not only our science community, but the wider worldwide community to get involved in these challenges, because we believe that the best things come out of diverse collaborations. And I think that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Philippa, for these inspiring words. Chiara, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Philippa. Indeed, a perfect introduction for the scientific part. The SKA will be definitely a game changer in many different fields, astronomy and astrophysics, cosmology, and also fundamental physics. So here I will just outline some use cases for which the SKA will be unique. There are many other use cases in which the SKA will be fully complementary with the other astronomical resources that are being developed for what is a very bright future for astronomy all over the world. So in this image, we can realize something, because we might think that that galaxies with their billions of stars, possibly surrounded by planetary systems, are there unchanged since ever. But this is not at all the case. There has been a period in the history of the universe until a few millions years after the Big Bang, in which there were not at all bright sources shining in the universe. Then they started to form in the so-called period of cosmic dawn, and then in the epoch of reionization. And then galaxies start to have their own evolution, with the stars forming at a different rate, from a few per year to thousands per year, and also dying, with stars dying, and all these at a rate that changed over the history of the universe, and with a strong peak in the star formation rate of overall of galaxies about 9 to 10 billion years ago. Why I'm talking about this? Because these are outstanding questions staying there since decades, and the SKA will be uniquely able to help us to understand how and why all this galaxy evolution happened. The SKA will offer us the unique opportunity to study the raw material made of so-called ordinary matter that is behind the formation and evolution of bright sources from the cosmic dawn to current years, the current epochs, that is neutral hydrogen gas. So the SKA will be uniquely able to trace the hydrogen gas over all the history of the universe, and will also allow us to measure fundamental quantities to explain the evolution of bright sources in the universe, such as cosmic magnetic fields, that are really physical properties of all kinds of bright sources that we need to understand how all these sources formed and evolved. So the SKA will be uniquely able to allow us to study this kind of measurements, to make this kind of measurements. Then there is something else for cosmology that is extremely important. There are transit sources known as fast radio bursts. They are extremely energetic events lasting for milliseconds. So very bright flashes of very energetic flashes of light. And it's not only interesting, sometimes they appear and then they disappear and never repeat again. Sometimes they repeat. And what is amazingly interesting is not only to understand what they are, but also because while propagating toward us, they allow us to trace the matter, the distribution and the quantity of ordinary matter in the universe. This is of extreme importance for cosmology. Then there are other kind of transit sources or rapid sources that are called pulsars. These are highly magnetized compact stars that rotate very rapidly with a period as short as a few milliseconds. And why they are so interesting? Because not only they are exquisite probes of gravitational physics, but also because they can allow us to detect gravitational waves that are not being detected on instruments with instruments on Earth, and not even with the instruments sent in space. Basically, pulsars we can measure very precisely the arrival time of pulsars, and if we measure in a network of pulsars a global change in their arrival time, it means that the space-time between us and this network has changed due to a gravitational wave. So with all the pulsars in our galaxy that we will be able to measure with the SKA, a telescope, an observatory, will transform our own galaxy in a huge instrument for making astronomy, gravitational wave astronomy. That is something really extremely exciting. And I would like to stop by saying that was what is really exciting too, is that all what we can do now in preparation to the SKA, and we arrived here at this maturity level of science, thanks to the fact that we have been working all together. The SKAO has organized science working groups all over the world. And if we are here able to start using the SKA in this way, is because we have been really working all together within all countries on Earth. And I think that this is something that is motivating all of us a lot. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chiara. And that's a great transition to Simon's presentation. Simon, over to you. Oh, you're muted, Simon.
Thanks, William. Phil showed this diagram a moment ago, and I'll use it to build on the theme of collaboration and the international membership situation that the observatory has. And I think this map shows very vividly the representation and the footprint that the observatory has across 5 continents, and with a footprint that, if you look in population terms, covers a significant portion of the world's population. And I think where SKA is perhaps unique compared to other research infrastructures, whether they are in astronomy or elsewhere, is that we have quite a unique mix of nations who are involved in the project. We have some that you might consider to be the traditional astronomy superpowers within the field, but also we have vibrant, growing communities of less traditional astronomical communities who are participants in SKA. And indeed, I think SKA is itself a driver for the fact that those communities are growing and becoming more vibrant. Diverse cultures as well. It's a theme of the speakers prior to me. And I think, you know, where we are today, and we're seeing in this press conference that we have in front of us a brand new global science organization, which, building on many decades of collaboration involving thousands of people over that time, is now embarking on this global infrastructure project, which will change our understanding of the universe. But it's got to begin somewhere. If you look at the next slide. And this, a couple of years ago in March 2019, was the day when the SKA Observatory Convention was signed by these 7 countries that you see represented here in the slide. And shortly after that, we had the day of the Netherlands, the first country to complete the ratification of the convention. And then very recently, China, the final of the 7 original signatories of the Observatory Convention, which then is the founding point for having the Council, which, as Phil has indicated, next slide, please, met for the 3rd time last week. Here's a picture of us in our council chamber here at Jodrell Bank, and the virtual meeting around us was able to meet and make this momentous decision. And I think it's important to recognize that the SKA family is made up in this council of 2 categories. There are the members, those countries that have completed the ratification of the convention. They're indicated on that set of flags at the bottom with an asterisk. But much more broadly, we have a collaboration which goes far beyond that. And you see them represented with that impressive set of flags. And they are there as observers to the council. And very early on, it was agreed that the council would work in, again, this word again, a collaborative way, aiming to ensure that there was a mechanism whereby those that could move quickly could do so as members, and those that need more time in order to prepare the ground for membership in the future can do so in an appropriate way as well. And this has been the council's strategy, is to have a mechanism whereby national participation can grow and develop, so that ultimately all the countries that we see represented at the bottom of this slide, or this observer group, can ultimately join the SKAO, the observatory, in some way, contribute financially, and achieve the aim set in the convention of having the broadest possible collaboration and participation around the world that we might be able to achieve. And that highlights really a lot of the work that we're still doing. We can't talk too much about some of the details here today, but suffice to say that there is significant work ongoing as we look to broaden the group of countries that are involved in the observatory and broaden the membership group. We're in active discussion, negotiations with prospective new members right now. And in addition to that, we're looking at having a mechanism of ensuring that those that need some interim step that might be required before membership of the observatory is possible, that's possible through what we're calling cooperation agreements. And again, we're spending a lot of our time working with a number of countries on putting these things in place. And more broadly, we're looking to the longer term, exploratory discussions with potential member states that are outside that group, shown on the previous slide. And hopefully that will prove fruitful in the much longer term still. And in the last couple of months even, there's really visible evidence of not just the progress that's being made, but I think the appeal of the project internationally. Just last month, the Council voted to admit France as a member of the observatory, and accompanying that very shortly after that announcement was made, President Macron was able to make a very positive statement about France's membership during a visit to South Africa. You see him there with President Ramaphosa. The idea of bringing the family together in the best way that we can is also exemplified with the recent agreement, cooperation agreement between the observatory and EPFL, the Technical Institute in Lausanne, which currently represents Switzerland's interest in SKA. And that's quite explicitly an interim step, which very pleasingly sits in parallel with the Swiss government's announcement of its intention to join the observatory as a member, subject to some final processes that will be going on through their parliament in the coming months. But I think these show really graphically the growth of the observatory and the ability of the council to hold to a plan whereby we can move forward and grow the membership and really look forward with confidence. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Simon. And now we are going straight into what brings us together today, which is really to announce the start of the construction. So Joe will take us through some high-level definition and principles about this. Joe, over to you.
Thanks very much. And so this Thursday for the start of construction has been our focus for the better part of 2 years now, and it's attained thanks to the work of, as Phil has noted, hundreds of collaborators around the world, and the hard effort across all those institutions and all those countries. And so what I'm trying to focus on this slide a little bit is to say that attainment comes even further back. And it was already mentioned that decades since the conception of the SKA, and then that's sort of typical for these large research infrastructures. And so on the screen now is sort of the last few years focusing on how we actually got to this point, and maybe starting at the 2015, 2016 point, noting that the way that this was designed is that there were collaborations of institutions that came together and said, okay, you've got your high-level science requirements. Those are flowing into a set of technical requirements. How do we build the systems then that realize those performance goals that you have? And so those collaborations took it upon themselves to go through and do trade analyses, explore different implementations to see how to put this together, looking not only in many cases at the engineering requirements, but also at some of those programmatic aspects as well. How much does it cost? How long will it take to put together? Is there a way to deploy these in these remote locations that we're building on? And so you can see the chain of events that goes through a checkpoint in 2016 to see how those elements, those subsystems were coming together as an overall system. And then advancing to the critical design review where the decisions are made. You have an implementation, but now you want to try to qualify it. You want to test it in an environment as close to the operational environment as possible to really ensure that this is going to work and get it to that level of maturity. That's then followed on the lower right blue box with a system critical design review. And that's not just the design aspects. Again, it's also all the programmatic aspects. Do we understand how to produce these various components and systems, et cetera, such that we can actually predictably deploy and execute the planning to realize the observatory as we're trying to commit to our community. And so following that, there are a battery of other reviews that we've gone through, cost reviews, independent firm brought in to look and scratch and challenge at the derivation, the basis of estimates, the processes that were following to get to the point that we had. And then also including the operation reviews. The operation component of this is absolutely vital, and they really come in hand in hand. The two documents on the right, which are both available online, the construction proposal, observatory establishment delivery plan, they go together as the representation of how the observatory moves forward, both building and accepting and operating those instruments all the way up until the point we're able to engage the community for research purposes. And so the little text box that William just showed on there is just to note that this wasn't without some problems. Of course, the COVID-19 impacted everyone. And of course, it impacted our organization as well. And it did challenge us in many ways because of, in particular, the inability to travel to the various places. But part of our strength is in being a very global organization. We have native talents deployed in the regions that we needed. And so even if we weren't able to travel as much, we still had access in large part to the prototypes that we had deployed, in particular in the site locations. And then the lower text box is just illustrating after this point, after we've gotten to that, then we drove to develop these two documents and submit those as drafts initially, receiving comment, polishing, refining those, then ultimately going to council, and of course, culminating in the approval that we received last week. Next slide, please. Well, maybe one of those salient things that you're going to notice with the transition in July is, of course, procurement. At some level, the first thing that we need to do is to move forward to secure the teams and the goods that together make up the observatory, so we can go forward and begin to assemble and verify them. And so one thing to note is in our pre-procurement phase, and as a part of this global collaboration, there are a number of principles that we adhere to. And one of them is called fair work return, where countries that have invested so much in the SKA, even up to this point, and are investing in the construction and operations over this 10-year period, are looking at some level to get some return on the investment, in particular in their industrial and technical aspirations. And so the fair work return basically commits to both a guaranteed and a target level of return back to the country in terms of the contracts that will be realized, largely competitively within a different within each country. And so those are allocated. If you look at the chain of subsystems that together assemble both the low and the mid facilities, most of those contracts are really allocated within the member countries. And that's the approach we have to realizing them. And so there are a fair number of contracts that make up those systems. And we basically, because of the way we have to proceed, which is basically building one, I'll get into this in the next slide, we're basically building the smallest recognizable array in each location to sort of test out the architecture, make sure that it's all working. Because of that, the consequence is that we really have to engage in almost all of these contracts within the first 12 months. So between now and July of 2022, 85% of those contracts will actually be awarded and underway, engaged, and driving us forward. And as a part of the preparation for that, part of how we were able to argue and answer to the council our readiness is we've been through these a range of internal contract readiness reviews with challenging red teams and independent assurance overview of those to make sure that certainly for the proximal contracts, we have the information in hand. We've done the decomposition of the details of the requirements that are needed for those such that we're ready to go. And maybe a vitally important stage for us was the release of the first market survey that occurred in Australia at the end of last month. And you can see some of the web presence for that announcement. And that's basically the first expression of there's a contract coming, there's an opportunity there. If there's interest in this, please let us know. We'll keep you engaged in that, and we'll begin to follow on the formal procurement processes. And so this is something that you'll now begin to see. And the last slide then is just what happens next. And so what is the construction execution strategy, if you will? And that really is, as I said, to develop the earliest possible working demonstration of those facilities in each country. And we call that an array assembly 0.5. We had them enumerated, and then we added an even earlier one to really test this, because it challenges so much that we really need to understand at an early stage before we go to the full production. Again, in this pre-construction phase, we've done prototypes, we've built aspects of the observatory, but the scale of the SKA really challenges us on every front, not just in terms of the technology, but also just in terms of the logistics and the production. And so it was mentioned 131,072 antennas have to be deployed. And then there are electronics associated with those that come not just in ones or twos, but 8,000s of those need to be deployed and linked up into these signal processing systems that ultimately feed the chain that Philippa was talking about. And so overall, we do that first. We check that. It's a bit of a gate at some level for some of the full production runs that we have to go. But then we continuously expand. We exploit the interferometry architecture of being able to continuously work, expanding on it until we can realize the full performance capability. And on the right-hand side, you see the high-level milestones that we're hoping to hit on the way to the delivery of the SKA Observatory. Thanks.
Thank you very much to you, Joe, and thank you to all the speakers. So it's been a bit longer than planned. Sorry about that, but I hope it it gave you a nice overview, if you like, of what the SKA Observatory is about, and where we are and what we are about to enter into in terms of the new era of the construction. So I will take questions from the floor now. So I will ask people to raise their virtual hand, and I will take questions in order. I will ask you to state who you are and your affiliation as well, and maybe who you are directing your question to, if you know. So I've got Jeff Fust. If you want to go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you. This is Jeff Faust of Space News. Two quick questions, maybe not easy answers, but straightforward questions. One is, of that €2 billion cost, how much of that has been raised or committed by the members to date? How much more do you need to raise to reach that goal? And the second question is, what effect will the various broadband satellite mega constellations like Starlink and OneWeb have on the observatories, and what steps are you taking to try and mitigate any of those effects? Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. I think both questions are for you, Phil.
Yes, thank you very much, Jeff. A very, very relevant question. So we have raised a large majority of the required funding. The members would not have been willing to go ahead with the decision to proceed to construction if they didn't feel comfortable that the requisite funds would flow. I'm not really in a position to talk absolute details on that. Those are confidential council matters, but we do have a significant fraction of the funding secure. It's a fairly typical situation for large research infrastructures. So we have some years in front of us to be able to raise the additional funds that we need, which is very much a minority. With regard to the mega constellations, yes, we radio astronomers have been used to dealing with the interference from satellite and aircraft systems for many, many years. But what the mega constellations do is they change the game for us, because they're contemplating putting up tens, hundreds of thousands even of satellites with downlinks that fall within the receiving bands of our instruments. I absolutely acknowledge that they are transmitting legally, but nevertheless they can cause problems. However, we are in technical discussions with industry, relevant industries on this. We have proposed mitigation measures, which would limit the impact, significantly limit the impact on the SKA telescopes. And so we're working towards solutions on that. But it'll never go away. As I said, we've been living with it for decades, but we do hope to minimize the impact. And it is confined to particular frequency bands where we see that impact. So, yep, it's a challenge, but we're working the problem.
Thank you, Phil. If I can just add something on that, we did issue a press release actually on this very matter a few months ago. So I strongly encourage you to look at our website if you want more details about the situation. I will go to Alex now for the next question. I just encourage people on YouTube as well, if you want to ask questions on the YouTube chat box, and we can channel these into the room here. Alex, you're next.
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a question about the bigger interferometric networks. Do you have plans to join EVN, VLBI, or some other networks in the future?
What's your affiliation, Alex?
I'm Special Protocol Task Newswire, TAASS Newswire. Right.
Thanks. I want to take that one, Phil. Another one.
Yeah, that's probably my area again.
Yeah.
Alex, I am actually when I did research, VLBI was my field. So I have a strong affiliation with the networks you mentioned. SKA will have VLBI capability, and it is our intention that SKA will participate in the VLBI network, the very long baseline interferometry networks. Once we are up and that element of our design is operational. So yes, we will be working with the VLBI, the global VLBI community.
Sorry to follow this. Is there any time frame for that, or it's too early to say?
Actually, so Joe is better placed to talk about the time scale for that.
Sure, and I should have mentioned, can you hear me okay?
Yes, yeah.
Yep, I should have mentioned in the sort of right-hand side of that table with the various level 1 milestones in the schedule, it kind of shows the hardware deployment. But of course, that's matched with observing modes. That's what's really relevant to our community. And so the commissioning of those observing modes as we move forward. And so the very earliest stages, of course, we're really looking at the most basic of continuum and spectral line imaging. But as we begin to continue the deployments and expand on our capabilities, we then begin to add in, for example, the pulsar and the time domain physics. And one of the fundamental deliverables, although it is a later stage and the later array assemblies, if you will, the VLBI is one of the commissioned observing modes that is one of the first modes that is delivered to the community at the culmination of construction.
Thanks, Joe. Daniel, you're next.
Daniel Fischer from Germany, from the magazine Astronomie, das Magazin. I have a question for Phil Diamond. In your very first slide at the bottom, you mentioned the SKA phase 2 with even vastly more dishes. Is the planning for phase 2 happening while phase 1 is built, or does it all happen only after 2029? What's the plan there?
So thank you, Daniel. So our ultimate ambition is and remains to build what we call the full SKA, which is building out this much larger second phase. Quite naturally, the governments want to see that their taxpayers' funds is well invested. And so we're building the SKA in phases, taking full advantage of the nature of the arrays is a natural way to go. So they have, for a long time now, insisted on this phased approach. And we're very happy with, this is very much a sensible way to go. So the long-term aspiration is to go that way. Various of the members do continue to mention in council and previously in board meetings that is also their long-term goal. We have not put any significant effort as yet into the design of the second phase, other than broad level thinking, broad concepts. It's something that would happen when the creative engineers, those involved in design, begin to get a little bit more time on their hands, which is quite a way through the construction activity. And then their attentions may turn towards phase two. Joe, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that as well.
No, I think that's right. Certainly our focus does need to be on the delivery of what we've committed now to demonstrate both the capabilities of the design that we've come up with, as well as our good stewardship of the funds we're receiving in terms of predictable deliveries. And so I think it's something that will arise relatively quickly once we get underway, but right now not our focus.
Thanks, Phil and Joe for this comprehensive reply. We've got Jean-Luc Dauvergne next. Jean-Luc.
Hello, I'm Jean-Luc Dauvergne from Ciel et Espace. It's the French main magazine about astronomy in France. I was wondering, why don't you have any participation of USA in this project? Does it have something to see with the participation of China?
Phil, that's
yeah,
for you.
I think that one's for me again. The US colleagues for many years were heavily involved in the development of the SKA concept up until about 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago. At that point, we were assuming that the US would provide a third of the resources that we would need. But you may be aware, and it's their presence in the project is absolutely nothing to do with China. You may be aware that the US go through these decadal surveys, looking at a community-driven process, looking at their priorities, where they wish to, the National Science Foundation and NASA, to invest its funds. And in fact, they're awaiting now the outcome of the 2020 decadal survey. Back in 2010, US colleagues had put in a proposal for continued development funds for SKA, but that was before we had even a conceptual design at a significant level. And the timing was not appropriate. The timing of the decadal survey didn't align with the SKA timing. And so in that decadal survey, the US SKA activities did not get a high enough priority. And so the US funds were, unfortunately, from our perspective, directed to other highly deserving projects. And so the US, unfortunately, stepped aside from the SKA at that point. Nevertheless, we still work very closely with colleagues in the US. We share ideas, share softwares, very happy to talk hardware. Many US colleagues sit on our external review panels. So it's definitely not a divorce, but it was just a fact of life from the 2010 decadal survey.
Thanks, Phil. Jacinta, you're next.
Hi, thanks. Jacinta Delhaize here from the Cosmic Savannah in South Africa. Congratulations, Phil, and everyone for this momentous occasion where it's so exciting and we've been waiting so long. Could you just say a little bit more about the plans for the rollout of construction at the sites of the precursors and how the mitigation strategies for the impact on the science operations of those telescopes?
That one's definitely for Joe.
Joe, you take this one.
Yeah, so we benefit greatly from very close collaborations with our colleagues in the host countries. And in particular, we have, we operate on their facilities, our precursors are on their observatory grounds. And so we've worked very closely hand in hand with them with interference planning, essentially, to try to understand how we can work the construction in around the operating telescopes and minimize the impacts on their ongoing operation. And so as it stands right now, we've identified the issues. And in particular, maybe I'll focus on South Africa in particular. It's really the construction activities isolated in the core, less so in the spiral arms. Again, the breadth of the SKA in mid-facility is 150-kilometer baselines. But the early work in the core is an area of concern. I should say it is likely matched with ongoing work that is happening under their construction for Meerkat. And so hopefully that helps us in terms of not interfering as much as we may have if they were not having that ongoing activity. But the bottom line is we're working around it, and with the identified interferences that we have now, the schedule already takes those into account, basically limiting what periods of time we can perform works that would interfere with ongoing operations.
Thank you. We've got Anjali now. Anjali.
Hello to all. I am Anjali Marar from the Indian Express. It's a daily newspaper in India. I have two questions. One is, what are the foreseeable challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic as the construction phase begins? And the second question is, are there any more countries likely to join the SKAO apart from the 16 countries at present? Thank you.
Thank you, Anjali. Joe, you take the first one.
I think, yeah, the first one. And so, right, so the pandemic has, as I noted, it has challenged us even in the pre-construction, although I think we demonstrated it at some level, some resilience because of the global distribution of the technical expertise and knowledge already globally. And so even when international travel, as an example, wasn't possible, intra-national travel within Australia, for example, was possible at key times, allowing us really to continue on. The projection ahead, I won't try my hand at too much, other than saying that the schedule that we have right now really has significant activities beginning really in sort of the first and second quarter of 2022. So we do hope for further improvement in the global situation as we move towards that. But again, we think that we do have some insulation from that as work can begin in countries with staff in those countries in many cases. The other challenge, though, however, is maybe in terms of the volatility or fluctuation of goods, containers, electronics, things like that. We did have some estimation of the uncertainties in those as we go forward in the pre-construction, estimation. But some of those estimations are being impacted by the emergence of how the economies start up again globally. So we'll have to see about that. We will have to appropriately adapt, and we've already made various changes to accommodate, trying to push some of those things as much as possible to accommodate further conclusion, if you will, of that volatility, so that we have better understanding. Our projections are as strong as they need to be. next part, I think, is Phil's.
Thank you, John. Next one probably for Simon, maybe,
Yeah,
the expansion of the membership.
Yeah, thanks. I can take that. Thank you very much for the question. As I remarked in my presentation, I think that there are probably two angles to this. The first is that the council is focused very heavily on ensuring that we can look at the current family, that group of 16, and ensure that we have a route to membership or some appropriate engagement with the observatory for that group. But in addition to that, the second track of activity is, just as you say, it's to look beyond that group at the potential for other involvement, whether that's by countries or institutes, which might lead to something at a national level later on. And in that, there are quite active discussions. I'm not going to list in detail the kind of discussions that are going on, but suffice to say that we're trying to approach that from two angles. One is looking at where there might be a community, a sort of bottom-up community-led interest in developing some engagement with SKA, and also from the top down, from a political level as well, whether there are a direct approach through some government agency to discuss the opportunity for SKA engagement. So we're trying to tackle that from both sides. And the council is going to be giving a lot more attention to this over this next 12, 18 months for sure.
Great, thank you, Simon, for that. We've got a question from YouTube. Actually, it's a technical question, so maybe either for you, Chiara, or Philippa. It's a question about the algorithms that we use for SKA's imaging processing software. So, is there a formal verification mechanism for the algorithms that we use? Who want to take this one, Chiara?
I can start and then leave the word to Philippa if she wants to add on what they are doing at SKAO. So indeed, there is a lot of huge development. In this sense, pathfinders and precursor instruments have been key because they have allowed us to start conceiving the mathematical needs behind. Now, what we need to do is to scale what is available now to the size of SKA data. So the data challenges, first of all, are extremely important because we can test on simulated SKA data of the right size what is available now and understand what is needed to be further implemented. And then the commissioning phase that is programmed in an excellent way in the preparatory documents of the SKAO will allow to start testing the algorithms on real incoming data. So the advantage of having an interferometer is also this, the fact that we can start by building the instrument, testing what will be used at the end, and so be ready for science at the moment in which the telescope will be fully built. But I would like really to stress again, as I said at the beginning, the key role that pathfinders and precursors have in this field.
Thanks, Chiara. I don't have too much to add except to say, yeah, one really exciting thing we're doing with the data challenges is to work with our software teams to try and understand how to incorporate the outputs of software in our simulations. And this allows us to then be working with the scientific community, as that's the emphasis all the way along, to be able to get things that the science community will need once the SKA is online. So yeah, it's a really nice opportunity to collaborate between all these different teams.
Makes sense.
Maybe a final point, William, just to mention also the SKA Regional Center. We have not been talking about the SKA Regional Centers, but this network of centers that will be distributed for archiving data, making them available to the community, and also doing any kind of analysis and post-processing. We are currently running a survey with users in order to precisely identify what are their needs. So there is also this huge amount of work behind all these to identify with the scientific community what are the needs for treating the data. Thanks.
Absolutely, good compliment. Thanks, Chiara. I've got two more hands. Anjali, I don't know if it's the same one as before. If you have a further questions.
I think it's from the previous one.
Okay, no worries. Jean-Luc, same thing. Do you have a new question or?
Yes, it's another one.
Okay.
I wanted to know if you have some plans to limit or compensate the emissions of greenhouse gas due to the data center, for instance, and maybe other part of the observatory.
Question sustainability. We want to take that, Phil, maybe for you.
I think that's more of a technical issue for Joe.
Okay.
I can take that. I think that sustainability has been something that's built into the observatory, and at some level we benefit from the confluence of the fact that going toward renewable solutions actually is ending up being a fairly cost-effective path. And so maybe the most important aspect of this is in terms of power production. And so most of our CO2 emissions, I think more than 90% of them, are really derived from our use of power. And so right now we should have, I think, I miss the Director of Operations, Lewis Ball, but he's driving forward right now, exploring how to go forward in terms of, we have a baseline plan, of course, for the power deployment in each of the different locations. But there are ways to improve upon that, both in terms of the cost, but also in terms of this carbon footprint that radically changed that outcome. And so a lot of it builds to these photovoltaic systems and battery backups that together at this stage, that combination of technologies is not so far away from the grid tariffs that one would charge in both Australia and South Africa. And so that's actually what's going on right now. There is going to be a power service agreement that will go forward, entertaining in particular these types of systems. And I should note that even now, the baseline for our observatory does have the outer, in particular, I mentioned the breadth of the arrays, that the outer satellite, either dishes or stations, clusters of stations, are already being served by photovoltaic systems. And so that's just one of the aspects of sustainability, but it's one of the tallest nails in the impact of building an observatory.
It is, and thank you, Joe. You covered one aspect of it, which is obviously the telescope power needs. And Jean-Luc was referring as well to the computing aspect, and I know that the SKA regional centers are looking into this as well. So, Chiara, if you want to say something about this.
Yes, so indeed, the SKA regional centers, it's a topic for those, but also for the observatory. And indeed, I think that there is a strong interest in co-designing machines between software and hardware, and with a particular interest in how to optimize the use of energy in the future huge superclusters that will be needed by the observatory. And this is a key. And I think that is something to be stressed, because so the computational needs of the SKA will be extreme. And if we manage to make progresses in this respect, in terms of computing for the SKA, this is a direct social impact, because this kind of architectures can then be used for similar needs for other fields. So we are definitely not only aware, but already working on this key topic.
Thank you. I think we'll take the last question now, again from Jacinta in South Africa. Jacinta.
Thanks. I'm just following up on that previous question. In South Africa, we have regular load shedding where the power goes out when there's not enough power for the country as a whole. Is this going to present a problem to SKAO, and are these sustainable options being considered to mitigate against that?
Joe, another one for you.
Yeah, and so it's basically in line with what I was maybe trying to express before. So the baseline at some level was the use of Eskom grid power in South Africa, which does have some issues, and the length of the transmission lines in particular to the site could be somewhat problematic. And so this is why, under the direction of Dr. Lewis Ball, they are driving forward with this power procurement planning. And they did put out a request for interest in South Africa. And there are a number of companies that are interested in building up, I think, renewable power sources and then serving a community, including our observatory. And so it looks like a very promising avenue right now, and it's just the alignment in terms of the timescales to make that happen. And maybe just to note, triggering off of what Chiara said, the power usage is quite similar at the observatory level. It's on the order of 3 to 5 megawatts, and it's similar off-site. And so these solutions do leverage against each other in terms of how we solve this problem, so that we really are doing what's best.
Great, thank you. And I think, yeah, I'd like to bring this to a close. So thanking again all of our speakers today, and thanking you, the attendees, members of the media, for joining us. So you should have received our press release, and there is a link to a media pack at the end. So if you want to have more resources like visuals, whatever, you can find that in the media pack. And of course, don't hesitate to come back to us if you've got further questions in the next few hours and days. So thank you very much again to everyone, and have a good rest of the day. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Probably have to kick us out, William.
Sounds like that.